Mike, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be chatting with you today on our next installment of 10 Questions with Joe. I am so honored to be spending this time with you. Obviously, we wish we were doing this in person, but in this environment, and you'll dive into this regarding your FDCC presidency, but in this environment, it's a whole new world. And just to kick things off, Mike, we are unbelievably proud of this great new presidency that's upon us, and all this hard work that you've put into play to get here, and we'll walk through those steps. I think it's very important to help teach and educate our associates and partners who are involved in organizations the path that you took to get here. And that'll be one of the questions that we'll tackle. But Mike, at the outset, I view you as a mentor. I view you as one of my closest friends. And if I had to describe Mike Glascott, I would say he's a salt of the earth person. And those great character traits that you have, that you show day in and day out, that have been instilled inside of you, came from your very humble blue collar roots in Buffalo. So
sure.
Can you just dive into your background? I've had the opportunity to meet all of the Glascott children. The story of the five of you, it's a phenomenal story, and the talents and the achievements of the five brothers and sisters are remarkable. And that doesn't happen without the great parenting and love that your parents have shown you through the years. So can you just give us a little background, Mike?
Absolutely. As you said, Joe, we grew up humble. There were my dad was a Buffalo police officer. My mom was a nurse. So we had both parents worked. My dad worked generally during the day, and my mom worked the second shift at the hospital. So I guess in the old terms, my father always bristled when I said this, but we were latchkey kids growing up. There were a few hours every day where we were unchecked. But my father always reminded us, you're the son of a police officer. You have to do it better than everybody else. Everybody's watching you. So that was always kind of the rule of the house. When other kids in the neighborhood maybe were getting into trouble, that was not allowed for us. But we grew up in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in West Seneca, New York. It was crowded. They were small bedrooms. And, we didn't have everything we wanted. We had everything we needed. And that's a story shared by, so many people that, we've become friends with, and people that have done well in their lives. And to that end, my dad, my mom was a nurse, so she had a college degree, but my dad, he left for the Navy when he was 17 years old, and he was in his 40s before he decided to go to college, believe it or not. And I remember we had 5 kids, and he'd go off to school, first at the local community college and then later to Buff State. But the value of education was instilled in us very early. And as a consequence, I have 2 older sisters. All 5 of the kids have postgraduate degrees. My oldest sister is a college professor, now retired. She has her PhD from Arizona State. My other sister has her master's degree, and my 2 brothers and I were all lawyers. So we've done well. But that early message that education, is the key to getting to where you want to be. That was instilled early, and we obviously all got the message. But that came from our parents. And the other kind of quote that I remember growing up is, "Don't forget where you come, or don't forget who you are or where you come from." And that's kind of my dad's way of saying, stay humble, but stay hungry, but stay humble.
So Mike, one of the things I admire most about you, and obviously you just passed that message along, that story along, is how great of a father you are. And Trish, your beautiful wife, and how great of a mother, and just in terms of the parenting unit and how great both of you are. I have had the opportunity to spend such quality time with your 3 children.
You have.
And I absolutely think the world of Aaron and Taylor and TJ, obviously. And Mike, will you just pass along and just give us a better look into the Glascott home and the impact they've had on you and your legal career? And as you kick off your presidency for the FDCC, I certainly know that that's one of those moments, that's one of those things that puts a smile on your face is the just the quality time that you spend with, obviously, Trish and the kids.
Well, my kids all know this because I've told them I was very nervous about becoming a parent. I didn't know how well I would do it. I certainly didn't want to scar my children for life, but as it turns out, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been there's no blueprint for doing it right. There's no manual. It's kind of a learn on the job type of thing. So, many of the things that we've done in raising our children is, I think it comes from our respective parents. Trish also had a set of strong parents that raised some fine children, and they've all done very well in life. If I had to pass on one key to parenting, it's this. The spouses, the mom and dad always have to be on the same page. Even if they disagree with each other, they have to be on the same page because these kids are smart. And if they sense that they've got some divisiveness or they can play one against the other, they will own you. So you need to get your game together. You need to be on the same page, and you have to communicate. So that helps both in terms of parenting, but also with regard to being married, the marriage unit. You have to communicate with each other, and like I said, you don't have to agree with each other, but you gotta be on the same page and put forth a common front to the children. And then I'll tell you a story. You might have to cut this out later, but we ran a tight household in terms of we had expectations of the kids, and I just had this conversation last night with my daughter Erin, and she now understands the value of what we were trying to do with them at a young age, and that is this: I never expected them to always succeed in everything they did. I did expect them to give it a full effort and to strive for something more. There's nothing wrong with striving for something more. Measured against that is, as a friend of mine puts it, the rule of the You need to understand that there's always going to be somebody taller, faster, smarter. Just accept it, and don't beat yourself over the head with that as you go through life. Because TJ's a great example. As you know, he's now taller than me, but when he was playing freshman and JV football at Canisius High School, he was this little guy that loved to play the line. And he was all of 190 pounds going up against 300-pound linemen at that school, and he just took it. So, I mean, my kids don't step back from challenges. They've hit them full force, and that's just the way they were taught to do it. And we're obviously very proud of all 3 of them.
So, Mike, let's talk about this big accomplishment that you have just achieved, the presidency of the FDCC, and one very important cog to that entire thing is obviously your family. And without Trisha's support, it's just one of those things. Trisha and the kids' support, you wouldn't be here. But there are so many other things that have gone into this entire process.
Yeah.
So as I said earlier, it would be very helpful for all of our colleagues who are a part of organizations and they want to achieve great things. They want to achieve leadership positions and better themselves, their careers, the firm, and the firm's perspective out there. But can you just walk us through from the beginning, how long things took you to where you are today, Mike?
Absolutely. I joined the Federation in 2003, and and the Federation's a little unique. It's there's a huge family component. The children and the spouses are very welcome. They're involved in many of the activities. We welcome that because, quite frankly, selfishly, if you can hook the parents and the children into the organization, the members go too. So sometimes you get the back side of the cart before you get the front side of the cart, and it works. And The spouses are a very important part of the organization. I have heard from many of them in the last few weeks about how much they miss being with their friends in the Federation. It's a very close-knit organization, and once you're in, it really takes over your life in many respects. Some of our closest friends are spread out all across the country. But after 2003, there were a few years there where I was trying to get my legs under me and try to figure out how it works. It's a kind of a very successful group of people kind of jam into one very small space, and it kind of takes your breath away the first couple times you attend a program and you see the incredible talent and skills of these fine lawyers. And I thought for a couple of years, God, am I good enough to stay in this? I've tried some cases and I did pretty well, but I don't know, these guys are pretty good. So after getting my feet under me a little bit, and then they gave me a few jobs, and the one message I would pass on to our colleagues is if you're given a job, do it to the full extent of your ability. Don't come up short, because if you come up short, you probably won't get asked to do another job. And it's that sequence of doing one job successfully, one after another, that earns you credibility in this group, in any group. And that's your reputation in a group like that. And it's most of these professional organizations, they're fast tracks, because these are highly motivated, skilled people, and they don't want to waste time on people that are trying to middle it. So give it a full effort, and that's what I did for a few years. And eventually I became the chair of the insurance coverage section. I did that for 2 years, and I did it in a very communal type way, where even if I didn't have, my programs were all staffed, I would try to get people that were raising their hand in my group, speaking positions in other programs. It was never about me, and that's one of the rules that I always adopted, and it's kind of a message for, in terms of leadership that I've passed on. I've spoken about this in the Federation. There are 3 basic components to it: identify, engage, and empower. You have to identify the people trying to come up behind you that have a willingness and yearn to do what you're doing, to lead. You need to engage them and tell them and educate them and pass on the savvy that you've accumulated in your short time in the organization. And then, most importantly, you have to empower them. A leader should never be thinking it's about them. It shouldn't be about them. Succession planning is kind of an underlying foundation to everything that I've done in the Federation. And that's key to, it's carried me at the section level. It's carried me on the board. I've always viewed my role in terms of what can I do for other folks. And as a consequence, we give out 4 awards to defense counsel with private firms in our organization. I've won 3 of them. I've been awarded 3 of them because of that kind of mindset of trying to bring people up behind, and because what's good for you and those people you're bringing up, it's good for the organization. You have a constant flow of talent on the rise in the organization. That applies to our firm. And if we're not trying to identify the talent in our firm, engaging them and giving them the opportunities that they need to succeed, we're denying ourselves tremendous success on the other side of that equation. So that's basically it, Joe. And then in 2012, I ran for the board. I served on the board for 6 years. I did everything that was assigned to me to the best of my ability. And I never made it about me. And eventually I ran unopposed for Secretary Treasurer, which is 2 years out from the presidency. Once you run for Secretary Treasurer in the Federation, it's an automatic Secretary Treasurer, President-elect, President, and then Chairman of the board. So that's been my track.
So Mike, in this unique environment, 2 months into your presidency, how are things going?
Well, the virtual environment has been a challenge. We have had to adapt to a new way of doing business. Just this morning, I was, communicating with a few people. They said, "Can I send this message out?" And I said, "No, don't send that message out. It's about overcoming challenges. don't focus on the negative. Don't focus on the poor, pitiful us having to deal with us. That's not what this is about. As I've expressed to my executive director, our officers, and our board, the rule of the day now is to, if we're going to engage and communicate and work in this virtual environment, I want the Federation to own it. And I want us to lead it in any way possible. I want to provide a value proposition to our members with regard to their continued engagement and membership in our organization. It's all about return on investment. And if you're not getting that in the form of education or opportunity or fellowship, and fellowship not just with other defense members, but also with our corporate and industry members who, we generate a lot of business, for our members in the Federation. Our corporate and industry members trust us because the vetting process to get in the Federation is so rigorous. Once you're in, I've been told by the, many industry members, it's kind of a pre-vetting for their panel council lists.
So Mike, before we dive into your GS career, you have had the opportunity to work on one of the most landmark historic cases that Western New York has ever seen, and that's the Love Canal case.
Yeah, it's quite a case. I was literally recruited out of the DA's office. I was a prosecutor for 3 years. I went in after having had a couple of years of experience, and I knew going into the office, I went in specifically to learn how to try a jury case, how to talk to juries, because I had tried a couple successfully beforehand, and I always felt like a bit overwhelmed. So I took a rather significant pay cut to leave a firm to go in-house with the DA's office. And I tried everything I could get my hands on. And I tried my first homicide, and it was about my 14th or 15th month in the office. I was the only one trying that case. I thought, God, did that really happen? And it did. But in any event, I just shy of 3 years, I left the office after being recruited by a local firm that represented, I'll not mention the client, but they were the target in the Love Canal case. They had a huge exposure, and they were about to start double tracking the depositions. So we were going to start deposing their chemists and their chemical engineers who have post-retirement, they went all around the country. So we were flying trial teams. There were 3, 4 of us that would fly into a city and spend days deposing these witnesses, and the one guy, their environmental engineer, that went on for several months, where there was a 2-week preservation deposition, and then the defense attorneys, we spent weeks. I think there were 9 weeks of deposing that guy. And in our opinion, that really unraveled their case. And I thought even they thought it was a game changer for the case. So that case eventually ended up resolving by settlement for most of us in 1996. And then I went to the civil side of that firm, and I tried civil cases for a couple of years before concentrating exclusively on coverage.
And Mike, just a quick snippet, what is Love Canal?
Love Canal is a local environmental, it's a toxic dump site that was used by Hooker Chemical, later purchased, acquired by Occidental Chemical. They dumped in the dump site from 1942 to 1953. One of the more heinous chemicals dumped in 55-gallon drums was a chemical called benzene hexachloride, BHC. It was basically buried in there, and then they covered it over. An interesting part of, and this was common with regard to the disposal of toxic waste, back in the day. Ironically, the Love Canal was originally a ditch, and it was envisioned by its creator, Robert Love, to create a pathway from one canal to another canal. And so that's what this open ditch was. He didn't finish it, so Hooker took the opportunity to bury these wastes. And like I said, the ironic part about the whole thing was that the density of the clay was ideal for burying toxic waste at the time. The lack of permeability made it a great vault for burying this. What they did wrong though was that when they covered it over, they used a porous soil that allowed the local water to fill. It was basically called the bathtub theory, where basically the bathtub, this clay vault with all the toxic waste, it filled with water over time because of the permeability of the cap that they put on it. And it basically got up to the top 6 feet of the soil, and it started to migrate sideways. And that's where all the local residences, there were neighborhoods built all around the canal, and that's what led to the alleged migration of chemicals sideways.
Mike, how long have you been at GS?
I came here in 2009, March.
And what brought you here?
The dissolution of my last law firm. We, in 2008, an epic year for many of us in terms of the financial, meltdown, the banking industry, et cetera. There were many challenges presented to a lot of businesses, and at that time, we had some disputes with some of our partners, and a lot of people ended up going sideways. And my group, I was in the coverage group at the time. We decided not to continue together, and actually, GS reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Sure." And as you well know, my brother Dennis was already here. He had been here for years, and talk about unique experiences. Dennis is no longer with the firm. He has since gone to work for one of our Supreme Court judges as her confidential law clerk. But the experience of practicing law with your brother, where he's literally about 10 feet away, his office door is 10 feet away, that was pretty cool. I got to tell you, that was a highlight of my career. We enjoyed that. We didn't do the same thing. I did coverage, and then he was doing defense work. I don't know how he slept at night with some of the cases that he had to deal with, but it was a unique experience, Joe. And I think both of us, we reflect on that now, and we kind of laugh about it. We wouldn't have had it any other way. It was just a great time for both of us.
So you just mentioned Dennis. Paul was at the DA's office, your youngest brother, and you.
Yep.
If we have to try a case, which one of the 3 Glascott brothers are we taking?
Depends. You know what? That's a good question. I think, Dennis and Paul has tried some. He's a bureau chief in the DA's office, and those guys aren't expected to try cases. Paul tries cases, and I think he enjoys it. He doesn't enjoy the stress that goes with that and the way that it takes over your life, but he does enjoy it. Dennis had some nasty cases while he was with our firm. I'd have to shake off a few layers of rust, but I will tell you that when I did try cases, and I did them a lot, I loved it. It's just been a few years for me since a lot of coverage cases don't go to trial. Someday, we'll see.
So Mike, based off of your past experience at your old firm, and you've been with us for quite a while now, what's different about Goldberg Segalla?
I will tell you this, and it kind of goes back to what I said in terms of leadership. The empowerment and that is afforded the lawyers in our firm to market or get involved in organizations. I could not do what I'm doing in the Federation if I did not have the full support. You mentioned my family, and all that's true, but I would not be where I am right now without the full support of the firm. The firm said, and before I ran for the board, and I knew that to be a serious commitment, I met with our management committee and I said, "Is this what you want me to do? Because if I'm going in, I'm going all in." They said, "You got to do it. We'll support you. Tell us what you need." The same thing happened when I was mulling over the decision to run for Secretary Treasurer. It was a good year or two out, and at the time I didn't know I would be unopposed, but I said, "You need to understand this is a big commitment. Do you want me to do this?" They said, "Of course, you must do this. You have to follow it through." And I have had the full support of the firm at every step of the way. And I'd like to think that I've offered some, again, return on investment to the firm with regard to that investment, but I could not do what I'm doing without the firm. And I see the same type of empowerment for other lawyers in our firm have expressed a willingness to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And you asked before about how did you address yourself, or how did you handle your business in the federation. I think our firm generally takes the opinion that if you're going to get in an organization, get in there and do it right. Lead, take on jobs, do them well. When we go out into these organizations, we're representing ourselves, but we're representing the firm. And I think our firm generally has a very fine reputation for a group of lawyers that get it done. When a Goldberg Segalla lawyer jumps in there in an organization and raises their hand, the person looking for help on something knows that they're getting a lawyer that is going to, both in terms of being diligent and follow through, they're going to get it done. And I would be very upset for any occasion when a Goldberg Segalla lawyer does not further that brand on behalf of our firm.
So Mike, as you know, Goldberg Segalla is always growing. We're always changing. What hasn't changed since your first day at the firm to today?
That's a good question. I still feel very good about the way that our firm is sensitive to, even in this COVID environment that we've experienced over the last, 6-7 months, there's a certain sensitivity to what is important to not just our lawyers, but all of our employees. And even with, some of the difficult decisions we had to make early on, I think there was a sensitivity to the issue of how we're affecting the lives of our people. And the idea of teamwork, that's at the forefront of everything we do. And I believe that, many of us, most of us, if not all of us, truly believe in that. I gain some comfort in knowing that mindset is shared by so many folks here, not just the attorneys, but the staff also. And at this firm, things move very fast, as you well know, Joe. We are very busy most of the time. It's stressful, and it's good to know that there are other people sharing that burden with us, with an equal mind towards doing a good job for the people that we represent.
Where do you see our firm in 20 years?
Wow, I didn't see that one coming. Well, first of all, I will not be here.
Well, I actually was going to throw that in, so I was going to take a crack at you, but I'm not going to, for the television studio audience at home.
I'm legitimately an old guy, so I won't be here. I think we have some leadership right now that has a clear understanding of where they're trying to go, and I think the vision has changed in the last year, and it clearly affected by COVID, a more pragmatic approach. I think that will yield very positive results in terms of our successes. So we have always had success in the courtroom. I believe that we've earned the respect and trust of our clients. I think that will continue to grow. I expect that there probably is growth, down the road, but I think we've accomplished a lot just in my time with the firm. The firm has done so much, and I think at least for the next few years, we need to perfect to the extent that we can. We never achieve perfection, but we need to really enhance or all those things that we put in place, and then see where that takes us. And I think we've got a group of folks leading the firm right now that are they have a clear understanding of who we're trying to be, and I think we're going to get it done. I have great hopes for the firm over the next 20 years. I think we're going to be just fine.
So let's take a little bit of a deeper look into Mike Glascott, the person. So Mike, what would today's Mike go back and tell law school Mike?
Great question. I think probably not to worry about the little stuff. I know that sounds almost trite, but to understand, you got to be somewhat fatalistic about where your track might take you. I will tell you that when I was in law school, I had no expectation that I'd ever try cases or that I would be with a firm. I didn't know where I was going to end up. It is certainly not where I now find myself. I think you have to somehow have your path laid out for you based upon the opportunities presented, and I think you need to be comfortable with that. You don't always get to pick your spots, and I think you just need to be, relax and do the best you can on a day-to-day basis. Work hard on those things that are on your desk, and just let it happen and see what comes.
You're very well traveled. You've had the opportunity through the FDCC and other organizations' opportunities to frankly travel around the world. Where's your favorite destination you've been to, either internationally or domestic?
It was a surprise to me. I didn't expect to embrace it so much, but I absolutely loved Paris. And I spent 3 or 4 days going from one with my wife because she loves this stuff, and the two couples we were with. We went to all the museums. We went to the artwork. I don't have a creative bone in my body when it comes to art. I can barely, draw a straight line. But when you're standing in front of masterpieces, I was surprised how it affected me. It was such an amazing experience. I hope someday to go back. It was a fantastic trip. So glad we took that.
What surprised you most about being a lawyer?
Well, I will tell you this. When you're growing up as the son of a cop, there are certain kind of expectations you have about the profession from the eyes of a police officer. None of that's true. and I think my kids, who they did see what the practice of law is all about, because when I remember distinctly, they were in middle school or high school, and we were sitting around the dinner table one day, and Trish and I asked the kids, well, what do you want to do? What's your focus? What interests you? And well, I don't know. And then I said, well, what about being a lawyer? And they said no. And Trish being a nurse, well, what about the medical field? No. And we asked, why would you not want to at least consider that what your parents have been doing for so many years? That said, you guys work too hard. So there you go. I didn't. I think when you're getting into it, maybe you understand that there's a lot of hard work that goes into everything if you're going to do it well. But being a lawyer is it's a lifestyle there where you have to go all in, where it takes over your life. And you have to be willing to submit to that lifestyle in order to do it well. And I think that's the thing that surprised me most. I didn't expect it to be easy, but the extent to which you have to throw yourself into it, that's a surprise.
So Mike, we survived. We have one question left. So how would you like to be described by others when you're not around?
Wow. I think as a lawyer, that could be different ways. I guess in terms of a lawyer, a go-to guy. I guess in my personal life, a great husband and father. It depends on who's soliciting from whom you're soliciting the opinion. But I've always wanted to be viewed as a stand-up guy, good to his word, and somebody you can count on. And I guess that counts both in terms of my partners, the other folks at the firm, but as well as in my personal life, my children, my wife. A stand-up guy that is good for his word. My word is my bond, and kind of old school in many respects. And I think that aspect or that attribute that I aspire to do well at, regrettably, I think that's lost in our profession, Joe, and it's disappointing. I don't see that. When I started practicing law back in the 80s, it was, your reputation preceded you always, and you cared about that, and you wanted that reputation to be good. I don't always see that as valued in the current day and age, and it's a little disappointing. And I think it's probably a typical statement by most of us old guys, where it should revert back to that a little bit. And I would tell on a young attorney, young dad, be that guy. You want to be known as that guy.
Mike, I was born in the 80s, but in terms of, I
It's
want to
ironic that you and I get along so well.
I want to first congratulate you. The accomplishment for the FDCC is as great of an accomplishment as one can achieve in their legal career. So I first want to congratulate you. I want to thank you for being a great friend, a great just supporter of my charitable endeavors and of the firm. I want to thank you for opening the doors to your family to me. I absolutely adore them. I can't wait to see all the great things that your children achieve. And I know that you and Trish have laid that path. So thank you for being you. And I started this off by saying you're a salt of the earth guy, and you truly are. So Mike, I want to thank you for your time. I look forward to all the great things you'll accomplish in your presidency for the FDCC, and I absolutely know, I have no doubt that the FDCC will be left in a better position than when you inherited, when you took over the presidency, because you're that kind of guy that you would only make things better. So once again, Mike, thanks for everything, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.